First Person Advisors is now a subsidiary of NFP, the fifth largest insurance broker in the world, combining local expertise with access to global capabilities and solutions. Learn more at firstpersonadvisors.com.
And that's why it is an honor, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to introduce Ms. Beth Goetz, the next Director of Intercollegiate Athletics for Ball State University.
For Beth Goetz, returning to Indiana to take over Ball State's athletics department, a no-brainer. She's a Midwesterner who had already learned the ropes at Butler University.
Growing up here in the Midwest, having spent almost 5 years in the state of Indiana, that was a draw, right off the bat, because I felt like it was a community that I really could relate to and engage with.
She's been on the job for about 4 years now and has helped guide the renaissance of Ball State sports.
The Ball State Cardinals are champions of the Mid-American Conference. On the ball! Surprise, surprise! The king is back!
Ball State Director of Athletics, Beth Goetz, one of only about 24 women leading major college athletics programs in the United States. She's my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. She's been there. Beth Goetz has walked the walk as a student athlete, played on the pitch for Clemson's women's soccer team in the mid-90s. And she's a Midwesterner, grew up the oldest of four in suburban St. Louis. Beth got her degree in psychology and thought she might want to become a therapist. But she couldn't shake the sports bug and eventually started coaching soccer. Then moving on to the administrative side of collegiate athletics. She was named Director of Athletics at Ball State University 4 years ago. And I'm pleased to have Beth on the podcast this week. Beth, thanks for joining me. How are things in Muncie?
Thanks, Gary. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And things in Muncie are great. The sun is shining. We are have almost concluded another exciting year. And we're just really pleased with how everything's going here for the Cardinals.
Yeah, what is, I'm sure there's no downtime as an athletics director, but you get a little bit of a chance to kind of recharge in the summer. Is it a little less hectic?
Yeah, I think most people will probably tell you there's maybe maybe the last week in June, first week in July tend to be maybe the two of the quieter weeks in college athletics. But, honestly, the more sports, the better for us. So we enjoy it when our student athletes are competing. And although a short turnaround time in the summer, it's almost like you're just pushing for football season to get here again. So we like this cycle.
What's it like to be an athletic director today? Because it has obviously changed over time, and certainly I would guess in the last year with so many things, NIL and all of the things we see that are front burner issues. What are the challenges of being an athletics director today?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question in our day and time, and with the transformational things that we think We're going to see here in our industry. I think at the core, Gary, the things that drew us all to college athletics are still front and center for most of us in our day-to-day, right? It's the experience that we can provide these young men and women, the belief that we have that college athletics and this competitive environment really enhances the educational experience and provides them additional tools that are going to help them to be successful long after their careers in sports conclude. But I do think just the awareness of things that are going on nationally, whether that be pending litigation, is there going to be congressional involvement in some components of major college sports? You've got name, image, and likeness. We're concerned about mental health issues that we see, not just in student athletes, but we are not immune to that. And I think we've seen our fair share in that area. So certainly a different time and a lot to navigate beyond what we all think about in terms of just being out on the fields of competition.
Yeah. everyone has an opinion, seemingly, on name, image, likeness. From your standpoint, how do you think this is going to play out? I mean, I guess no one knows for sure, but gosh, there's so much buzz about this, so much going on around NIL. What's your take?
Yeah, I think philosophically, this is a space we were delayed in getting into for a long time. And so, I think I would say here at Ball State, and me personally, we're a proponent of student athletes being able to build their brands and use their brands and monetize those when appropriate. And I think that's an avenue that's been available to general students for decades. And we've been too slow to get there. And as a result of that, we sort of fumbled into the space, and some guardrails now about that would help us define how this was truly intended, as opposed to it being an inducement, and to try to stay away from pay for play is really what you're trying to capture, if you can. And the genie sort of got out of the bottle, and now you're trying to roll it back in and add some guidance. And I think that's going to be really challenging, to be quite honest. But at its core, I think it's a positive. I also think some stability comes over time. The market tends to right size itself. And so you're hopeful that between us trying collectively as an industry, trying to figure out how to appropriately monitor and force the components of NIL that we want to hold true to, and the market right sizing itself, that perhaps we can see our way through this. But it's an interesting time, and I think we came out firing on all cylinders here, and it's been impactful, particularly in high-profile places.
There are those who say NIL is the ruination of college sports. It sounds like you don't agree.
I think in the right context, and when I say the right context, in combination with the institution's brand, an individual student athlete does have a brand, and their ability to monetize that brand while they're participating for your institution, I think, is a positive. When you get into a space where it's being used to entice students to come, or in a way that it's going to be seen as pay for play. So if you're successful, this is what you receive. If you don't, we're going to take back the car. They may seem like nuanced distinctions, but I think that's much different than somebody figuring out how to be entrepreneurial. Again, a skill that we want them to have as they go through their educational process. And so there's some fine lines there, but the distinctions, I think, are pretty impactful. So, in my opinion, we want to continue down the space of helping to educate them and on taxes and how to build your brand and market yourself, while at the same time protecting what we believe is the foundation of collegiate sports, which is that it's not a pay for play enterprise.
Yeah. How would you characterize the state of Ball State athletics today?
Yeah, we've been really encouraged over the past few years in several areas. And I say that knowing that we're not yet satisfied. It's been really important to us that we raise the level of excellence, and we want to do that on the fields of competition, in the classroom, and in our commitment to really help develop these student athletes so they're prepared to go out and be leaders in their communities and in their industry of choice. We've had 3 years of consecutive record-setting academic standards across the boards. Our student athletes are graduating at an incredibly high rate. We just concluded a spring semester with a department GPA of a 3.4, and so we're really proud of the efforts of our student athletes that are supported by our faculty and staff, and certainly coaches in that area. And we're winning more championships. As you know, if you're a competitor, winning more is never enough. We want to sustain that success. We want to be successful across the board, but we certainly can point over the last couple of years to incredible momentum and a tremendous year by football 2 years ago with the championship. Last year, even this year with our bowl appearance, that's only the third time in school history we've had back-to-back bowl appearances. Often is said Ball State's a volleyball school. We've more than proved that this season with championship runs by both men's and women's volleyball. Women's tennis is firing on all cylinders, but we want to continue to to grow and make that contagious. So we're successful in all areas. So we're really pleased with where things are, but we're not yet satisfied and want to continue to grow and be able to sustain that success across all our sports.
Yeah, football and basketball typically get most of the attention in college sports, but as an athletic director, I'm sure one of your key challenges is really trying to achieve success across the board in all sports, in both men's and women's athletics.
Yeah, absolutely. We're equally invested now, whether or not there are as many eyes, on the field hockey field or the soccer pitch is a relevant question. But, excellence in all places is really important. So we want to be competitive. The MAC has a lot of parity across our sports, but we want to provide that great experience and opportunities to be champions in all of the sports, without a doubt.
You've got, talking about the two high-profile sports, Hoosiers, Indiana guys leading football, and Mike New, and then Michael Lewis in basketball. That sounds like when I saw that, I thought that was a great move and one that is going to energize, I think, the program.
Well, and I think we're seeing that already. And I couldn't be more thrilled to have Michael join the team here. I really do feel he is the best fit for us here at Ball State. His energy, his passion, and certainly his history, as a Hoosier. And, one of the things that we know, certainly there's some exciting points in Ball State's history from a basketball perspective with Sweet 16 runs back in the 90s. And it's important in the state of Indiana to be good in this sport. And so I think his energy, what he brings to the table is definitely what we were looking for in terms of bringing that excitement back to Muncie and giving us an opportunity to compete on the highest stage.
Your path to Ball State included leadership positions at UConn, at Minnesota, mentioned earlier Butler, Missouri St. Louis. What attracted you to Ball State?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that are always really important, and I do think this to say fit is maybe is overused, but I do think finding a place where you feel like your values are going to align with theirs, where you feel like you understand the culture in and around the state and around the program, and certainly that was a piece of that here at Ball State. I was really energized knowing that there was an opportunity to move the needle. So, it's exciting to be a part of not building something that the pieces are already here at Ball State, but maybe re-engaging, re-energizing, and resetting that level of competitive success. And I felt we had the opportunity to do that. And one of the reasons I felt that was true was really about what's going on across the university under the leadership of President Mearns, and to just be a part of a small part in athletics, perhaps, but a part of driving the mission of Ball State, growing that and how our institution serves the state of Indiana was just really exciting to me.
Well, at UConn, you had a chance to work for a legendary coach, Geno Auriemma. Talk about what makes him successful. I mean, his success is legendary in any sport. I mean, you have to look at that guy and what he's achieved. What in your view, what makes him successful?
Yeah, there's actually a long list, and when you have that opportunity to be around that day in and day out, it just your appreciation grows for what it takes to build something like Coach Auriemma has done, and I think that there's a handful of things that you see consistently when you're looking at champions, and I think it's a few things. One, their attention to detail and how they determine that they are going to define expectations, the consistency that he holds his staff, his team to on a daily basis of striving to improve, to get better. There's sort of a no day off mentality. And I say that not to the extent that, there aren't moments of downtime, but when you are in, you should be all in. And so that level of consistency is really incredible. And I think it's about identifying the way that coach is able to identify those who aspire to that and can do so in a way where they are both humble as you can be when you've won the number of national championships, but as a member of a team. because your number might be called at different points in times. And so when you're taking elite athletes in any sport and asking them to not necessarily always be the go-to individual, his ability to do that's really incredible. And the other thing I always mention about him is that as hard as his expectations, high as his expectations are, and as much as he really drives them on the court, he's equally as hard in his love and care for them off the court. And those young women, and certainly those that are now playing professionally or leading their own lives would be the first to tell you that passion extends on and off the court.
Yeah. Speaking of women's athletics, and certainly you were a student athlete in college, this is an anniversary, your big anniversary for Title IX, that landmark legislation. And I think Ball State, I think you're having kind of a year-long celebration marking that. As you reflect on and look at Title IX, the importance of that legislation to you personally, and then maybe more broadly, what are your thoughts on Title IX legislation and what it means?
Yeah, it's in my seat in particular, I look back and think about the opportunities that were provided to me and that just wouldn't have existed for my mom, for example, who was an athlete and didn't have the opportunity to play and engage the way that I have. But I think the access to certainly education generally, but through sport, you've seen just record numbers of women playing sport at all levels. We all stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before us, but it's not just about the opportunity in one sports season, but it's about the opportunity to learn and grow and what that leads to, the lessons that you learn and the skills you develop later in life. And so just feel really fortunate that I was able to experience that. I love that we now have to educate our student athletes on what it used to be like. And it's not to say we've gotten to where we need to go yet, but they don't think about a time where they wouldn't have had an opportunity to participate in sport at their high schools or certainly at the collegiate level. Certainly significant piece of legislation 50 years ago. And it's made a difference across so many spaces.
We'll have much more with Beth Goetz when we return. Beth Goetz, the student athlete, the coach, growing up in St. Louis, much more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
First Person Advisors is now a subsidiary of National Financial Partners, the fifth largest insurance broker and consultant in the world. Develop your total reward strategies all in one place with the combination of First Person's local expertise and NFP's global resources and integrated solutions. Learn more at firstpersonadvisors.com.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week, Ball State Athletics Director Beth Goetz. And Beth, you are a Midwesterner, right? Grew up in St. Louis. And I have to say, before I go any further, I noticed in doing a little research, we have one really important thing in common, and that's you're a St. Louis Cardinal baseball fan.
Oh, I am a Cardinal baseball fan. I thought that was going to be a great thing when I joined the Cardinals here at Ball State. And I found exactly. Actually aren't that many of us right here in Indiana, but it's a way of life when you grow up in St. Louis. I always tell people I don't have one childhood memory without the sound of Jack Buck on the radio in the game. Being played on the old radio in the kitchen. And so it's been really, really exciting. And they're off to a good start this year. And I mean, you got Pujols and he's even pitching.
I know. I saw
the ball out of the park. So
that was great. Talk about it briefly here. But St. Louis is such a baseball town. I mean, I would argue the best baseball town in the United States. Cardinal baseball, like you say, it is religion there.
It is. I mean, people talk about baseball like you talk about the weather and other parts of the country. But it's, as they say, it's America's pastime. But I think in that city, there's just so many components that tie, that run through what baseball means to that town. And certainly they had lots of success. I mean, growing up there, I just assumed everybody played baseball in October because the Cardinals do,
right? Yeah.
But it's really as a neat thing to be a part of. And I think one thing that makes everybody's hometown special are those things that unite people and bring people together of different backgrounds. And there's just no doubt that in St. Louis, it's the Cardinals.
Yeah. What was growing up in St. Louis like?
Yeah, I think it was probably a traditional sort of Midwestern, upbringing. And, I grew up on the north side of the community, Florissant, Ferguson area. Just was, really blessed to be a part of a great community, fortunate to have incredible parents and, maybe what I felt to me like just an idyllic childhood of a family time. We all played every sport you can think of, sort of outside, enjoying the space until somebody called you home for dinner every night. And it was a really, really neat place.
Yeah. So you were a multi-sport athlete in high school. Went on to college. Now you went to Clemson. Did you go to Brevard?
I did. So speaking, we were talking about Title IX earlier. So when I came out of high school, there still weren't significant numbers of soccer programs across the country. So for example, Missouri, my institution, the institution in my home state didn't yet have a women's soccer program.
Wow, and St. Louis is such a huge soccer town too.
It really is. Yeah. And so I was actually just coming out at about the time it was starting to explode. So there were Division I programs at the time, but Brevard College, I had a connection through my club coach, which was at the time, was a private 2-year institution. And they were, I think my year, we didn't win the championship, but we were number 2 in the country. And so in a beautiful place in the mountains of North Carolina. I just love the outdoors too. So it was an opportunity to go there as all of these Division I programs got started. And so that was a piece of the puzzle. And I loved my experience at Brevard. And when I came out, Clemson was just starting their program. Matter of fact, the visits that I would have taken coming out of there would have been Wake Forest, Auburn, Clemson, UNC Charlotte. They were all brand new programs. And so, today, you just don't think about them not being around, but that was a part of my experience, and was fortunate to have those opportunities, come about when I was in college.
Being a student athlete, I'm sure has a tremendous impact today in your role as an athletic director. Talk about that, being, having walked the walk, as they say, what that means to you as you do your job on a daily basis, running the athletics department there.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just a real understanding of what that process feels like. Those moments of joy and excitement, and the heartache when things don't go your way. And sometimes that means maybe you weren't getting the opportunity you wanted to on the field, or your team loses a big game. But I think you just have an idea of all of the pieces of that experience that are impactful to our young men and women today. And some of those happen on the field, some of them happen off the field, but that's why it's so important to me. It's why I'm so passionate about ensuring they have that opportunity, because I am the person I am today because of the opportunities I had in sport. And not just the successful moments in sport, but also those that were challenging and created opportunities to learn how to be resilient and be responsive. And it's just a special moment. Actually, President Burns here, who, as you know, was also a Division I athlete, we talk about this all the time. What would we do to go back and pick your hardest day as an athlete and just do that again? It just that being putting on that uniform for the first time, being with your teammates, whether it's your toughest fitness day, whatever you think is the most challenging. I mean, you just want to cherish those times and want your athletes to experience that in the same way that I did.
Yeah. How about role models? You have, as you look back and reflect, Everyone has usually multiple people. Any one or two people you could single out as a really important role model?
Well, I think, from the time I was a kid, I think it may be cliche to talk about your parents that way, but
Sure.
but certainly they are. And like I mentioned earlier, my mom was an athlete. She played basketball, and until I think I was working at Butler. I brought her to her first WNBA game. We went to watch the Fever play, and she'd always told me that back in her day they made them play half court. Well, I thought half court meant checking the ball. I didn't realize that that they just couldn't cross the halfway point. And so I just, and I saw her playing, softball as an adult in the church league down the street. And so I also saw her and my father raising 4 children, working and trying to make ends meet and all of those other things. And so it was always I think just someone that you could. They were people that wanted us to be the best we could and wanted us to find our own path, whatever that path might be. And so certainly that was, they have continued to guide me, but as a young kid trying to figure out who they are and what their place is in the world, I had some really tremendous role models. And my professional career, I've got an incredibly long list. I've just been so fortunate to have champions, people that really embraced me and tried to help me find my way. My college coach, which would have been really unique back in the day, but a husband and wife team, but Tracy Bates Leone really pushed me into college athletics. I would not be sitting here today unless she just thought I should try coaching. And because of her, I was able to do that. And, Dr. Sue Willey, who just retired down at UND a year ago when I was a young coach and administrator, I didn't even work at her school, but she took time to provide, guidance and be impactful. So there's a really long list of coaches along the way. And even you talked about Geno earlier. In addition to having a chance to work with him, there wasn't a Saturday or Sunday morning I didn't wake up and he was sending me an article from whatever, the New York Times, on some woman that had broken the glass ceiling in the business world. And he'd say, hey, you keep at it. So you got to surround yourself with people like that who are vested in your future success.
Yeah, you mentioned coaching. You did get into coaching. You coached soccer, right? I
did. I miss it every day.
Experience. How was coaching?
Yeah, well, I was so young, Gary. I was an assistant for a year, and Division II school, and there were kids on the team that actually I played with growing up. So they had an injury or whatever. But the gentleman, it was that was the head coach at the time. It was a part-time job for him, and his full-time job took him out of the state. And so here I was, I think all of 22, and they're looking around. I think by default, they said, well, I guess we're going to have to let her have a shot at it. And so I still feel for the first crew of kids because I had no idea what I was doing for the first couple of years. But, it was just such an impactful thing to be able to, to share your passion for sport, to sort of learn your way through that experience, and the relationships you have and can build, I think when you're coaching, are just second to none. And so I miss that part of it every day. I don't miss the games as much as I miss practice and and the preparation pieces I really enjoyed. But yeah, it was a great experience. And I think really, gives me some perspective that's helpful as I manage coaches, now today.
Looking ahead, one of the big projects you've had there at Ball State is putting together a 5-year strategic plan for the athletics department. As you look out into the future, you look at that plan. What are some of the kind of the key pillars, if you will, or things that you want to see happen with Ball State athletics?
Yeah, I think the thing with any strategic plan, particularly in our industry today, right, is you've got to be nimble and maybe shift a little bit. And so I think there's some of the pillars that we've established that are consistent and always will be. And those are some of the pieces that make college athletics important. So obviously competitive success and ensuring that we're putting a great support system around their academic goals and achievements. But I do think that as we look out maybe into the next couple years of that strategic plan, some of the things we'll have to tweak is the environment around student athlete experience. And I can put a lot of things in that bucket are going to be really critical, because the support mechanisms that are needed for student athletes today are really critical. So how are we providing mental health services as the world around us deals with more stress and anxiety? What are the components in and around providing support to student athletes to really help them develop that we can lean into, like student athlete nutrition? And so how are we helping them, not just telling them from an X and O standpoint, but how are we helping to develop and grow them as in their athletic performance, sports performance? The technology in and around sport is really just incredible. And so I think you're tracking on all those things, as well as what does it mean to be a Division I athlete, and what's going to be here 23, 25, and 2030, and how do we be successful where we sit here at Ball State as a member of the Mid-American Conference in the group of five? How do we continue to provide that level of experience with the different levels of financial resources required, providing broad-based programs, and being a key component of our institution like Ball State's overall mission to maintain enrollment levels and contribute in other areas. So it'll continue to evolve, but I think it's really critical that we keep a focus on what's important to the student athlete and how do we navigate that in a new world.
Yeah, you talk about the MAC, and one thing, certainly television is very important to college athletics. And the MAC, to me, I think they've got a great television package. I love watching football on Tuesday and Wednesday night. It's MACtion, right? I love watching that. Is that a benefit to Ball State and more broadly the MAC to have that TV package?
Yeah, it certainly is. And I know, I wasn't a part of the league when that first came to be, and there are challenges with that setup. But from a television revenue standpoint, it's certainly been advantageous for the MAC to be the only game on in town, so to speak, because everybody watches MACtion. I did before I joined the league, because if you're a college football fan, you're watching the college football game that's on. As I've talked to our student athletes, because it's a little bit harder to navigate attendance and things like that on a Tuesday night in the middle of November, right? Here in Muncie, but they appreciate the opportunity for the same reason we do, because that exposure allows them to be seen by family and friends across the country. So I think it's just been a huge benefit for the league. I think they've done a great job in branding and embracing what that can mean for us, and we're excited to see that continue.
And one more thing as we look forward, now you're on the Division I college basketball committee, right? And you will ultimately be the chair of that committee, right?
Yeah, I was the vice chair this year, and feel really fortunate to have the opportunity to serve as the chair leading into what'll be the 23 championship. So some exciting things going on there. That championship's going to be played in Dallas next year. As a matter of fact, it'll actually Dallas is going to play host to Division I, II, and III championships all at the same
really?
time,
Wow.
which will be a neat experience of that. But there's been a lot of publicity around some of the equity challenges that have existed over the years, and so it's a fun time to be a part of that. And we just have a great group of people that help lead in that space, and I'm glad to be a part of that team.
Beth Goetz, the Director of Athletics at Ball State University. Beth, it's been a real treat to chat with you. Really appreciate you joining me on the podcast, and really do appreciate the job you're doing at Ball State, because you're elevating not only athletics, but the university as well. So continued success to you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC. It is a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana Business News 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.